Everyone, welcome to the Dating and Relationships Meetup, also to the Nonpartisan Red Pill Men's Group. Today, we're going to be talking about monogamy, and particularly monogamy in a post-feminist world. I put in a modern world, but really we're talking about a post-feminist world and how to get to monogamy. We're doing a book study on Rollo Tomassi's book, The Rational Male, and I will put the text up on the screen, and then we will go ahead and read it together. And we're reading the section on goal-state monogamy, monogamy as a goal versus as a product of dating non-exclusively. And so we'll start, and then after that, we'll open it up for discussion. And the discussion is open to whatever you want to talk about related to monogamy or to dating or to relationships. Sometimes we can get a little off, help some people out. So it looks like we're ready. So what I'm going to do is let's see, anything else I want to tell you about here before we get started. Yeah, remember, you can register for these programs at tinyurl.com/redpillmen. And you can join this conversation if you're listening to us watching us on Facebook at tinyurl.com/redpillmen. Also, there's two things I'm thinking about doing. One, I'm probably going to make some t-shirts, and you can give me some feedback on this with our emblem on the front, and then on the back, maybe a saying, Mitgao, or don't pay women for that. Let's see. So that's one thing, getting some t-shirts, raise some money. And then the other thing possibly is doing in November a Sadie Hawkins type party where we're going to try and get the women to take the initiative, buy him a drink, get his number, take him home, So, but right now, let's just start. Let's see, what have I got here? All right. So plate theory number 4, goal-state monogamy. Whenever a guy uninitiated to the concept of spinning plates reads the theory for the first time, his first response is usually rejection of it, because it conflicts with what I call a monogamy as goal mindset. Understand, this is always going to be a tough stretch for any guy still plugged into the feminine matrix, but it's not limited to them. It's also the natural guy who doesn't have much trouble attracting women. A male-specific monogamy as a goal mindset serves the feminine imperative, but it also has roots in our natural desire for security. So it makes anything even remotely like plate spinning counterintuitive. The feminine imperative pounds into men's collective consciousness over the course of a lifetime that monogamy will cure loneliness, make them responsible, provide them with a constant supply of sex, and a host of other things that assures them it's the right thing to do and it's in their own best interest. This then leads the more optionless individuals to develop and practice beta methods and rationales in accordance with what they believe and have been told by women is required of them in order to achieve their monogamous intimacy, i.e., the goal of everything. And by beta, he means there's 2, alpha, beta. Well, there may be other categories, but a beta basically is kind of like a guy who's kind of simpy, believes in Disneyland fairy tales. He's and basically money is his main tool, one of his main tools. So understandably, when the principle of being non-exclusive is presented to them in a rational way instead of a ridiculed way, as it is normally passed off as, it conflicts with this perceived path to happiness and monogamy. So often we hear people start talking about it's meaningless sex, you're just using women for money, or all you want is sex, or it's I want something real, I want a relationship, I'm not into mindless sex. And we hear all this negativity about non-monogamous type of behaviors, and there is some criticism for non-monogamous behavior, sure, but it's so negative. It's like it's not a real relationship. It's just something less than that, but they are real relationships. So understandably, yeah, the very idea that any man would be better off with more options in this area of his life, or could feasibly and logistically pull it off, seems foreign. As a counter to this, he makes up rationales as to why it won't work or won't work for him. Logistics, which he goes over here, he starts to go over some of the rationales average frustrated chumps use. I can't spin plates because I have too little time. I can't manage more than one girl without the other finding out, etc. So if you intend spinning plates, if you are indeed spinning plates in a healthy, upfront, non-exclusive way, this should never be an issue. There are game-aware men with less time than most who manage 4 to 5 different girls in a week without having them consume all their leisure and business time. I want to tell you, it's kind of difficult when you're dealing with 4 women. If you have a big plate of stuff, I mean, just meeting with them and making love to them is going to take you, hours. So let's see. I don't suggest that you go this route per se, because for the better part of pickup artists rely on dishonesty and non-exclusivity. However, the reason they are capable of this is because they've perfected plate spinning effectively enough to have the plates spin themselves. Most uninitiated betas reason that they must, at all costs, apply a constant effort to each and every individual girl they encounter at risk of losing a good one. Besides this being besides this being indicative of soulmate thinking, what they fear is losing a plate because they are unaccustomed to having had the leisure to do so. This is evidence of a scarcity mentality that is a result of their monogamy as a goal preconditioning. Plate theory necessitates an attitude of fearlessness, not carelessness, fearlessness. When we're practicing plate theory, your plate should call you. You are the prize and the prince whose time is valuable and sought after. You should be the object of women's pursuit. That said, you still have to make an effort to see them and keep the attention you do apply to them valuable. But this must be done with the attitude that if one plate falls, you're confident in your other options or ability to generate new options. So once you start spinning plates, once you can have developed something where you can actually start to get dates on a regular and consistent basis, then you have much more confidence and your ability to generate new options, and you won't feel so destitute when the one woman who's paying you attention decides she doesn't like you. Personality, I'm just not that like that. This is a personality type. I don't want to be considered a player. I could never do that to a woman. How can anyone be like that? This rationale is a common one and not limited to chumps. There are plenty of otherwise confident, positively masculine men who still think they owe it to a woman to allow them to set the frame in their relationships without any fear of competition anxiety. So when he says set the frame, that means, the woman's supposed to enter into a man's frame, into his life. That's the way most women are. And so when you start having a woman start dictating that you're entering into her life, then she's having control. You're not the leader. She starts to lose attraction for you because you're not the leader. You're too easily manipulated. You're just a nice guy. And probably don't have any other options if you allow that to happen. Players are men who are dishonest. They are not spinning plates because they are isolating each plate independent of the other. And this goes back to logistics. Of course, you can't find time for anything else if all you do is try to coordinate each individual story with each plate for fear that they will discover each other. The plate spinning man, on the other hand, has no need for this because he never implies exclusivity to any plate. Either they accept this or they're not a plate to consider. Done in a frank, honest, yet indirect way, you will not be a player, and you will establish yourself as a man whose attention is worth a woman competing for. And this is one of the primary rules we hear all over and over again. Women would rather share a successful man, or I might say a high-value man, than to be saddled with a faithful loser, a low-value man who's very faithful, but he's not high value. And this perfectly sums up plate theory versus monogamy as goal mindsets. Men, in general, gravely underestimate the power of female competition anxiety and how useful it really is. As I'll illustrate next, women are natural plate theorists. If they're going to be telling you, oh my God, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? But all the time they're doing it themselves. They don't have to pay for a lot of dates a lot of time. That allows them to date endlessly. Men, our resources will limit our ability to date. And that's why I ask women to pay now, and at least their fair share. So they are accustomed from a very early age to mitigate multiple sexual interests. They simply learn how to balance their indirect communications with that anxiety in their own plate spinning. Anxiety in women is good for men. Even when they make no effort to use it or would never consider it if they knew its usefulness, it is always present. Everything a woman does on a daily basis is colored by competition anxiety, makeup, clothing, shoes, the shoes, indirect communications with men and women, social contrivances, which women use to manipulate and deceive men, comparing and evaluating dates and possible suitors. Everything is born from this competitive desire to achieve security with the best possible guy and make damn sure that the girl next door doesn't get him first. And that's because women are really competing for a smaller, ever-decreasing group of men as women become more financially secure and equal to men financially. When they're looking for men who make more money than them or have more than them, they're competing for an ever-shrinking pool of men with multiple women. And this results in the hookup culture, which is another word for polyamory. Now, this anxiety is analogous to men's consummate fear of rejection and all of the myriad rationales he will create and the buffers he'll devise to avoid it. Bear in mind that monogamy is a dictate of the feminine imperative. The feminine imperative is to secure the best possible genes while at the same time securing provisioning and protection and power and status. So bear in mind, and buffers are things we do to kind of mitigate the pain, texting and on these social apps. It mitigates the pain of rejection. So bear in mind that monogamy is a dictator of the feminine imperative. It is the social contract that the feminine ultimately needs in order to quell a constant desire for security in a very chaotic world. When you are predisposed to monogamy as a goal thinking or trying to break yourself of this, understand that this is a tool of the feminine imperative. That's not to discount the overall merits of monogamy, but it is to make you aware of how it's acculturated into men as a responsibility to providing monogamy. Men who find themselves in a state of internal conflict about abandoning monogamy as a goal are really confronting a fundamental shift in their prior feminine conditioning. All right. Hey, Clint, how you doing? Looking sharp there, buddy. Glad you can make it. Last week, I forgot to record it, so I didn't have any material. I got a number of chats here. Okay. Okay, so Joe Na says, do not want to get married. To want multiple relationships is fine and natural, but it's also natural to want just one person to love and care for you out of the rest. Do not want equals to not want. Okay, right then, right. They only value monogamy when Chad is the one offering it to her. That's a very good point, Jay. And all right, so just raise your hand or open your mouth and turn on your mic. And if you would, it would be great if you would turn on your camera so we can get a picture. We know that this is going live on Facebook, I believe it should be. I thought it was. And it's being recorded, I hope. Yes. So, but feel free to comment. Okay, Joe, let's bring you in. And if you want to turn on your camera, that would be great, Joe. But go ahead, unmute and make your statement, ask your question.
All right. I like the fact that you make the distinction between a plate spinner and a player, because even notwithstanding the female anxiety that you're talking about, it's just plain honesty. You just tell a woman, "I am dating other people," and if she says, "Well, I like to be exclusive, and what about sex?" Well, I'm wearing a rubber. I'm not going to infect anybody. And I personally show a condom to a woman that I've had sex with so that I don't have to have her say to me in the future, "I don't have my period." Well, no, there's no leaks. I don't want to hear it. So it may not be romantic at the end, but it saves me from anxiety. But I don't like being a player. And if a woman says, well, then I don't think we can date, then you have to say, okay, see ya.
Right. What I've done is well, obviously when you have all these plates that you're spinning, woman says, well, I don't want to have sex unless we're in a committed relationship. I say, okay, great. We don't have to have sex. I date some very religious women. I've met a couple very religious women. I know they're kind of going to be like that. But at the same time, there's a whole bunch of problems, but I'm thinking maybe I need a religious woman like my mother. But so and then yeah, so I think that's great, Joe. I think that's right. And there was another thing I was going to say, but I forgot what that was. So all right,
About a
thank you.
religious woman?
What's that?
Something about a religious woman, maybe?
Yeah, well, some religious women, they have these religious beliefs and so forth. And really, one of the problems is they're going to have to be beautiful for me to hang around. and they're not going to get Saturday night and Friday night generally. You
That's right.
Right. I'm going to try and reserve those nights for women who have demonstrated interest in me. And
You
yeah,
know what
there's
I don't like though? I don't like the fact, and it's true, that the competition between women to have a guy is one of the major motivations, as opposed to a sense of responsibility and liking the guy for himself.
Mhm.
So instead of taking a look at the guy over there and saying, well, nobody else likes him, so why should I? The girl should say, nobody has him. He's a terrific guy. I'm going to get him. But they don't have that mindset.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that they should have just, be more open, be more open to sexual encounters with the men you date because like Jay said, you know, there's men who pay and men that women pay and then men who don't have to pay. And I often say I'm not going to be the man who pays. And so is this rule what is monogamy in that context? And
Well, even not even monogamy, because I don't pay either, and I let it be known. If you, some women have said, "Hey, let's meet up, let's have coffee," and you know that they want you to pick up the check for the coffee and the sandwich, and I don't do that, and
mm,
I let people know up front. Hey, we should go Dutch. If I hear any objections about it, I might give it a 2 minute type of
mm,
attention. I thought you were strong and independent. You have your own car, you've got your own job, you've got your own house, you've got your own apartment, and you want to be my equal, except of course in physical strength, but yet you don't want to pay. And they might say, well, the person who asked out on the first date, um, they're the ones that's supposed to pay. I say, that's your rule. It's not my rule.
yeah, yeah. I'm glad you can do that, Joe. I have some difficulty doing that, but I talk to women and sometimes I'm telling them now that I'm not looking to financially support a woman for the rest of my life, and I really don't want to pay for everything. And sometimes I get a positive response, and sometimes I get a negative response. But what I find is that um, it's the line between whether I get a negative response or a positive response is usually on beauty. That I have trouble finding a beautiful woman because they seem to expect more in that range. I have a joke, because women always sort of are looking for you to pay in one way or another. So I'm lucky that I'm okay with having sex with old, fat, and ugly women, or I wouldn't be having any sex at all.
Let me tell you something. Even if you were rich, had status, and could attract a woman, you would still have the same attitude from them as you would from the fat and ugly woman or from the sevens that you may be dating now. Because all women want a man, as you were talking about before, who makes more money, has more status. They even wrote about it 20 years ago in a magazine. I clipped out the article. That's the way they are. So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter about how much, if you're attracting the sevens. If you had an eight or a nine, they would still be the same way. And you'd still have to tell them, you're strong and independent. I want you to pay. What's the problem? If
Yeah.
they object, they're parasites. Simple.
Yeah. And the one of the things that is very in this modern world, in this post-feminist world, in a world of financial equality, where I've already mentioned about the shrinking number of men who qualify for to be in that type of relation who actually have more money. And it gets even worse the older a woman gets because the older women have more. I mean, why would I have a relationship with a woman my age and have to pay the same and do the same stuff as I would do with a woman that's 30, or
Of
20
course.
younger than me, you know?
You know what? And you talk about the problems for women who are getting older. Have you heard about Al Pacino and his particular problem?
I don't remember it, but I know there is some problem there. Why don't you fill us in?
Well, he's 83 years of age. He
Uh-huh.
married a woman, I think is either 30, 25, 30, 35, still substantially younger. They have now, well, this happened about a month ago. So now the baby is 6 months old. She divorced him. Guess how much money she's getting from him? Well, I'll tell you, I don't have people might get. She's getting $4,000 a month child support for a 6 month old.
Yeah.
Now that's a problem. And poor Al. I mean, take a look at poor rich men. They're so stupid. They marry you the first time, the second time, the third time.
Yeah.
Hey,
So
guys,
Jay, yeah,
you
yeah.
know what I mean?
Jay, hop in here. Unmute, hop in. What
Yeah,
you got to
no,
say?
that's Joe. That story is absolutely hilarious because you'd think Al Pacino, the tough guy, in real life, away from the movie set, he's
Yeah.
probably not nearly as tough as he should be when it comes to setting boundaries. So it's funny how the on-screen persona is not quite lining up with the actual human. No, it's funny. It's funny. The whole dates thing is interesting because now we're in this kind of changing of the norms and like, yeah, both genders have equal pay and all that, but there's no equal, rights when it comes to the dating world. So I think it's more important than ever that men set the boundaries up front. And I think it's it falls on the men's shoulders to set the tone up front. And I know this one guy said like, oh, I've gone on all these first dates with all these women and they don't go to, I'm paying, but I don't see them after I pay for their meal. They never call me back again. And he still does the same thing over and over. And I'm like, you, you realize this is not you're not really getting your money's back, right? He's like, yeah, but what do I do? So I think, and there's so many other guys like him. They're just I don't know if they're being taken advantage of, or it's literally just his, uh, on the date, performance is so bad that the women don't want to see him. Anyway, what I'm saying is 90% of these first dates don't go to the second date anyway. So it doesn't make any sense for you to pay, some big, large, extravagant sum. I think coffee dates should be, all that's necessary because you're just getting to know each other. And I don't think a coffee should be, anything more than like $3 to $4, even at a Starbucks. And also keep in mind, you guys, that when let's say two women, for women that roll that way, when two women want to date and they get to know each other, they always go Dutch. They never have disagreements about who's paying because they view themselves in that relationship as equal. But when it's a man, they're like, oh, the man has to pay because of gender norms, that are 70 years old. So I think again, like I said, it goes back to men to set the boundaries up front that, hey, we're going out, but we're going Dutch. If not, it's best that we don't waste each other's time. And I think if more men did that, these discussions would die down. So my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're right, Jay. And setting the frame, we're setting the frame in the relationship. So that's part of the frame. In other words, you're letting the woman set the frame. If you allow her to take advantage of you, and these women will try and do that, they will. I went on a date yesterday and I found that this woman, I mean, and it wasn't a bad thing, but they start to tell you, do this, do that. No, put that there. Here's a napkin. Go to the restroom. You better go. You better do this. And they start to tell you what to do, and immediately you're in a struggle to set the frame in that relationship, and you don't want to get into an argument with the woman. You don't want to. Maybe it's making her more comfortable, so you got to distinguish. But Richard Cooper calls it betatization by 100, I forget, 100, I don't know, questions, but they little by little they control you. And then of course you got to look out for narcissistic women who are very, very controlling as well. And so many arrogance, women, they can do anything when it comes to sex with men. Really, they don't want to do anything, but they can, and many do.